Maury. I am one of the International Studies Program advisors. And then I'll go ahead and let my colleagues, Eileen and Amy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves as well?
Sure, I can go. Hi, everyone. I'm Eileen. I'm one of the advisors for ISP as well.
Hi, I'm Amy Butsadi. I'm the intake advisor at GPS.
So I'm sure a lot of you have kind of met with us already, or you've kind of seen emails and stuff. So we're happy to have you here. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to one of our directors, Dr. Gilson, where she can introduce herself, and she's going to do the majority of the presentation today, but we will be on the chat and everything. If you have any questions, we can kind of answer those during the presentation, and then we'll also have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Dr. Gilson, take it away.
Take it away. So I'm Nancy Gilson. I'm the Director of Academic Programs for both the School of Global Policy and Strategy and for International Studies. I've also taught in International Studies for many, many years, long before any of you were old enough even to be at college. 101 and in the 190s. And so program that's near and dear to my heart. Some of my closest academic friends were some of the founders of ISP. And so it's a program that I've sort of grown into my current position while ISP has grown up. And so I'm very happy to meet you all, and I'm always happy to meet with ISP students. So this is a broad overview of the BA MIA program. It's my sense that the relationship between GPS and ISP is a very congenial one. They are natural partners in this because the curriculum of ISP was actually designed by faculty at GPS, what was then the School of International Relations and Pacific Studies many years ago. And so it's a curriculum that very much shows the sort of DNA of what is now GPS. Oh, so I'm not going to read the slides. Y'all can read, but let me. There is a piece of it here that there are a couple of things here that I want to reinforce. One is that very much like ISP, GPS is a very interdisciplinary place. And the faculty is a mix of political scientists, economists, international management professors, and now we have 3 faculty who are also, well, actually 4 faculty, one new who's starting this year, who are also STEM faculty, 3 who teach at Scripps, and 1 who teaches over in the engineering, and they all do climate and energy policy and climate change and global warming research, and so are really sort of evidence of the insistence or the sort of groundbreaking work that GPS has done in terms of kind of breaking down academic silos and bringing in people who are able to talk about how policy is made and do policy analysis, but are also quite aware of what's going on the STEM side and in the sciences. And similarly, our management faculty teach in both GPS and at Rady. Uma Karmakar teaches marketing in both places, as well as advanced marketing methods. And Uma, in addition to having a PhD in management, has a PhD in neuroscience. And because I guess she didn't have too much to do when she was growing up. And so she's one of those people who studies social media advertising, for example, and some of the new technology that can actually track how long your eyes are looking at particular kinds of advertisements, and monitors, sort of the deep use of social media and advertising. So it's a very interesting faculty. So it's really, the BA MIA then is really a program that's designed for people who are interested in, as the slide says, in advanced training in policymaking and international affairs, but within the context of international economics, international management, development, the management of international nonprofits and NGOs, international politics. We do a lot of security, international relations, what in the political science department would be called comparative politics. And so you are currently all ISP students. If you're admitted to the program, you will change your international studies major from where you are now to just international studies. And so you'll earn a bachelor's degree and then matriculate to 1 year of graduate work where you'll earn the Master's of International Affairs. So this is a lovely graphic so that we get away from too much text that allows you to see sort of how the programs fit together, if you will, whether you came into UCSD as whether you came in as a transfer student, to see where it is that you begin to take graduate work. So if you look at year 4 for the freshman entry, or year 3, which we know, the year 2, which we know for some transfer students is actually going to be year 3. We do know that some transfers take longer, but in that final year as an undergraduate, you are an undergraduate, so you may still have a couple of undergraduate courses to take, but you begin graduate coursework as a senior undergraduate, and then graduate with your bachelor's degree, and then matriculate to 1 year of graduate work. And so in that year 5 or in that year 3, maybe year 4 for transfers, you become fully a graduate student, and at the end of that year, then get your Master's of International Affairs. So these are really concurrent programs in your senior year. So this description of the curriculum should actually be familiar to you in lots of ways, because again, it is really, no matter which of the tracks you're doing, political science, economics, or business, you've had to take 101 and 102, where you've been introduced to the idea of interdisciplinary thinking, asking interdisciplinary questions. I know that, for example, at GPS, we would tell you that you can't really think about trade policy or environmental policy or even the regulation of business without thinking about policies that are in the other, sort of other disciplines. How the development of energy technology, just think about the debates about, for example, cellular technology and the relationships between the United States and China, for example, or Asia, the countries that are developing a high-level cell technology. And so that all gets wrapped up, of course, into the international relations between the states, and whether we're friendly to one another or we see one another as predatory or strong-arming us into very particular kinds of relationships. And so that interdisciplinary character of the curriculum should be familiar to you. It shouldn't be surprising. And as a consequence of that, then it really does develop you able to think about policy and jobs in policy or jobs in private industry that cross those sort of traditional disciplinary boundaries. If you're interested in things like population growth or economic development or trade or business climate, corporate social responsibility, which is really becoming the increasingly new thing in terms of employment that combines concerns about climate change and equity for labor, and then also things like supply chains and costs of goods and so on. So this is really, we try to think about where those job areas are and really develop curriculum that leads you into where the important policy areas are at the moment, and thinking about what kind of jobs you're going to want, given where you are right now as undergraduates. So the BA MIA program is open only to those of you in majors of international studies, economics, international studies, international business, international studies, political science. And then when you apply and are admitted, then you will have a defined secondary track, which you don't have prior to being admitted to the program. You have interdisciplinary courses that you have to do. So if you're in political science, you have to take stuff outside of political science, or if you're business, things outside of Rady. But this really circumscribes you more directly so that you have a good foundation coming into GPS. And the note at the bottom is very important, that the requirements for the BA MIA in these 3 tracks are different than those for the regular tracks in IS Econ, political science, and international business. One of the sad conversations that Erin, Eileen, and I have with people is they come in to apply and they haven't really looked at the requirements and discovered that they're an economics track but have no political science, or they're a business track but haven't thought about how they're going to do their regional requirement. So it's very important, if you're seriously interested that you, in the program, that you look at the BA MIA curriculum so you know exactly what your requirements are. And any of us would be happy to meet with you and put together the checklist that will show you in quite explicit detail what the courses are that you need to take, so that when you come to apply, you've got at least the minimum requirements in place for us to review your application. Okay, so this is an overview, and we're going to talk about this in more detail in the next few slides, but I just want to make sure that everybody sees the sort of broad overview of the BA MIA application, or the BA MIA requirements. You have a language requirement. And so, let me say a couple of things about that. ISP already has its own language requirement. That's 4 quarters or 4th quarter proficiency. If you take an equivalency exam, or native proficiency, if you come in, having gone to high school outside the United States and in a language other than English. So you have that 4 quarters at ISP anyway. The requirement for GPS is 6th quarter proficiency. So you don't have to have that by the time you are admitted to the program, and you don't have to have completed that by the time you get your bachelor's degree, but you do have to be able to demonstrate that you can get to 6th quarter proficiency by the time you are ready to graduate with your master's degrees. You have lower division requirements in math and accounting or economics classes, depending upon your track. IS Econ, IS Political Science, you have to take accounting, but you do if you're in international business. But the math is important. And then your upper division requirements, the ISP courses, again, your primary track courses and your secondary track courses, again, underscoring the difference between the standard requirements for ISP and those for the BA MIA. GPS methods courses, there are 2 of them. Everyone has to take them, one in the fall and one in the winter of your senior year. And then you have the regional requirement for ISP. And then let me just say a word here about your upper division requirements. So again, when you look at the requirements for the BA MIA, one of the things that you will notice is that the core of GPS will fulfill some of the requirements in your primary and secondary track. So not all of your political science classes will be from the political science department. Some of them will be in the GPS core. And similarly, not all of your economics courses will be in the economics department. Some of those will be fulfilled by the economics courses, micro and international economics in particular, at GPS. So they fall under the rubric of upper division requirements here because you take them as seniors. But in fact, you will see when you look at the courses that they have a GPCO designation, which means GPS core class, okay? So they fulfill some of your upper division requirements within your tracks. And then in your final year as a graduate student, you will have a career track and a regional specialization, which is a GPS regional specialization. And you'll also have a capstone requirement. Those of you who don't like the 190, just wait till you get into the capstone at GPS. Hopefully by that time, you'll see that doing research and writing is a lot more fun because you get to define the project entirely by yourself, okay? Then Erin has tinkered with the slides a little bit, and so we want to encourage you to look at the general catalog that you can get to through WebReg, right? But she's given you the link, and I encourage you to look and see what those classes are. Okay, the language requirement. So again, ISP has a 4th quarter requirement. GPS has a 6th quarter proficiency requirement. So the regions and countries are listed on the left. We do know that Japan and China and Korea are not regions, that they are actually countries, and only Southeast Asia and Latin America are regions. Technically, Latin America is even a continent, but whatever. For brevity's sake, we talk about them as a regional specialization. So then you have to have a language that goes along with those. So Latin America, the standard ones are Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese, China Mandarin, Japanese for Japan, Korea for Korean, and so on. These have now expanded to a large degree because the faculty has begun to recognize that, in fact, there are other languages that are quite dominant in Asia in particular, but also in Latin America. For example, if you are a proficient speaker of Tagalog, you can use that for Southeast Asia. We've also allowed people to use Spanish in Southeast Asia because of the prominence of Spanish in a place like the Philippines. French in Southeast Asia as well, because Southeast Asia is really this huge cultural and regional area that has enormously different cultures and sort of historical backgrounds. But we've even allowed some, some further sort of innovation, if you will. We've had students who've used Japanese to study Latin America because of the importance of the Japanese immigrant communities in northern Latin America and in places like Brazil. We have a couple of students using, Hindi in Southeast Asia, even some Arabic to study China because of the interest in minority policy. So this is broadly what's allowed, but indeed we allow people to be a little bit more creative if they can make the intellectual argument for it to work. So 6th quarter proficiency for GPS. It must be a language that matches the regional specialization. If you come to me and say that you want to use Urdu, that's going to be harder unless you can really make it to study China. That's really going to be harder. There's not a lot of Urdu spoken there, or Swahili to study Korean, again, difficult case to make. So broadly, the language has to match the regional specialization and match your intellectual interest in the region. We give proficiency exams. So for example, if you've grown up in a household that's bilingual and you think that you can pass the proficiency exam, we're happy to provide those with you. If you are ex-military and have gone to a language school and have a language certificate from someplace, for example, like Middlebury, that serves as well. So, if you have questions about the language requirement, by all means, it's my best advice that you do as much of the language requirement for GPS as an undergraduate, because when you get into GPS, you have to take the languages for a letter grade, quarters 5 and 6, And you have to have at least a B. As an undergraduate, you have a little bit more leeway there as long as you get a passing grade of at least a C-. So the calculus series, the 10 series or the 20 series are fine. Those of you who haven't started to take it, our best advice is, unless unless you're brave and also like math, the 10 series is perfectly fine. They're not identical. The 20 series really is intended largely for STEM majors. It moves a lot more quickly. It moves into material that the 10 sequence doesn't cover. I have students come to me all the time. The advisors will tell you that we talk to students all the time, say, why are you making me take math? I have statistics. Why do I have to take calculus? And the answer to that really is, as it says here, why math? Because the world runs on data. And while you may not aspire to be someone who's got incredible proficiency at big data, the management of huge data sets in either a business environment or in social science research, you're scrubbing social media on a daily basis to get everything that gets said about trade between the United States and China. You don't aspire to do that kind of research, that's fine. But you do need to be an informed consumer of data. In any of the jobs that students are getting coming out of most universities, to say nothing of GPS, being able to look at data and deciding that it's good data, that the right question has been asked, that the methods that have been used to determine whether this marketing campaign or that evaluation of a social policy is done well and thoroughly, requires that you're able to look at the data and make a determination. And so we require you to have the math. It's incredibly useful when you get into the economics classes at GPS and the methods courses at GPS. And a lot of people come in and discover that what they thought was just sort of the drudgery of the calculus series ends up being incredibly helpful when they decide that they want to take GIS, which is the geographical information system that allows you to make maps. And so for having the facility with math and being able to manage data sets becomes something which is incredibly fun, because like, who doesn't like maps? And being able to make your own maps and defining what is going to be in the map and what the map is going to tell us. Like you get, the opportunity to remake things in a way that makes more sense to you. First of all, you can turn the world the right way up instead of upside down. But the math becomes very important. So it's worth it to like put your butt in your seat and get through the series if you haven't done it. So these are the lower division requirements that you should know, again, looking at the BA MIA requirements so that you see what the foundational courses are. If you are international studies, political science, you need to take these econ courses because you cannot take the upper division econ that you need in order to fulfill your secondary track requirements. If you're international studies economics, you already know that you have to take those lower division econ courses because everything has prerequisites. And so again, you have to take these. And then in international business, you know that you have to take the financial accounting and the managerial accounting. And that becomes important as you move particularly into international management classes at GPS, because having more accounting opens up things to you at GPS that students who don't have that additional accounting have more difficulty in. These are the core classes. These you should know quite well: 101, 102, 190. These courses are taught every quarter. 101 and 102 are taught every quarter. There are a whole host of 190s. You know that ISP, Student Affairs, sends out an email that asks people about when they're going to take their 190. And Erin works very hard poring over spreadsheets, making sure that everybody gets one, trying to get them one that they're really interested in so that you're taking a 190 that's on a subject that you want and is in the quarter that you need it. If you are a BA MIA, the chances are very good that you will take your 190 as a senior. And a lot of students do that. There's Max. They take their 190 in their senior year because it allows them to complete a lot of their other upper division coursework, so that gets out of the way, and then focus on the 190. But we're happy to talk to you about where that best falls, and we can map it out for you and make sure, particularly once you're admitted to the program, that you get into a 190 when it best suits your schedule. And then these are your primary track courses, the upper division courses, if you will. And as I said a minute ago, as you can see, there are GPS courses that then serve in place of courses in your department. So if you are ISP political science, and you need to take these 3 courses, everybody has to take these courses, but they count differently for the different tracks. And so you will have, we tell you you have to have 8 primary track courses, but in fact, it's 5 in political science, it's 5 in the economics department, it's 5 in Rady, and then it's 3 in GPS of different configurations. So they count differently for you. Everybody takes these. And indeed, everyone in the 2-year MIA takes these. So when you begin to take GPS courses, when you move into your senior year to take the core, you're moving into really being a graduate student, even though you're still an undergraduate, because you'll be sitting in the classroom with graduate students who are here to do the 2-year masters. The curriculum is identical for you and for them. They have all the same requirements that you have. You're just starting as seniors. Oh yes, and as Erin, again, another reminder, make sure that you look at the lists, because there are things which are not allowed and courses which are specifically allowed that are not part of the normal, again, curriculum. And so we want you all to make sure that you're not taking courses that you think are going to get you farther, and then only to discover in your senior year that you're short a class. So this is your secondary track courses. So again, it's sort of, if you will, the kind of flip side of the primary track. So here you have 5 courses that are required for your secondary track, but you'll be taking only 2 in your disciplinary departments, 2 in political science, 2 in economics, 2 at Rady, and then you'll be taking classes at GPS that will fulfill your secondary track requirements, okay? And these are, again, taken in your senior year. You'll see that that these are courses, again, that everybody takes. And then this is your upper division requirement in the regional requirement for ISP. This is different for those of you who are Roosevelt students. This is different from your Roosevelt requirement. And this is a different requirement from the one that you have to do for GPS. So this is the international studies requirement. And those of you who are doing IS political science or IS economics going, why does IS business only have 2? It's because it's much more difficult for them to, given that their major requirements are much more structured, to get into the regional requirements. So they have to overlap their political science courses with their regional requirements. But you have to take these regional courses. For ISP requirement, your region doesn't have to match your language. So if you are a Spanish speaker, but you really want to study Japan, that's fine. Or if you studied German as an undergraduate, because you had a deep desire to read Faust in the original, or you did a classic language because Plato in ancient Greek was your jam, that's good. We're fine with that. You can have you don't have to have the match between your language and the region. That's a GPS requirement. And then these are the two methods requirements. These are taken in your senior year. And as it says, and in addition to the core classes that count towards your primary and secondary track. So when you look at the GPS or you look at the MIA requirements, you'll see these courses sort of hang in their own category because everyone takes them and they really are methods courses. They are sort of, particularly QM2 is basically an econometrics class. So it could technically, I suppose, count as an economics class. And indeed, if you are IS Econ and you decide to run the table on the econometrics sequence in the economics department and do well at it, let me know, because we can probably waive the method sequence for you, since most of what you'll do, as long as you take it for a grade, because much of what you do in the economics department will be the same as what is done at GPS, but everybody has to take these. And these are prerequisite courses for a number of things as you go forward into graduate coursework and the applied policy work. So then when you get to be a graduate student in your graduate year, you'll have to declare a career track, but you can, if you have room in your senior year, you can begin to poke away at the electives for your career tracks if you want to learn something about what's going on in the areas that you're most interested in. But these are the graduate career tracks. They are a total of 5 courses, 2 required. Typically, they are a kind of economics of and a political science course, or they're 2 different economic views. For example, if you do international development, you'd take a traditional economic development class, but also a class on the macroeconomics of development, which is a very different approach to sort of development economics. International econ allows you to do something that's much more conceptual, a class on trade and fiscal and monetary policy, and then take applied courses and so on. So each of these, and we can talk about them if you want, if you have questions about them. Once you get into the electives of the track, it really allows you to kind of specialize in your own way. The elective lists are quite long. And so, for example, if you do international environmental governance, but what you're really interested in is climate change, or what you're really interested in is sort of the regulatory politics of international environment questions, then you can really focus within your track. And so that positions you better than for a job that you might be interested in. And then the regional specializations, and I talked about those a minute ago, but this gives you some idea of what they look like. These are all broken down. The regional requirement is 2 classes, and they are all an economics of and a politics of. So for example, if you do Southeast Asia, it's the economics of Southeast Asia and the politics of Southeast Asia. If you do China, it's the economic and social development of China and Chinese politics. So they're all structured around that, taking seriously the idea that you can't understand the economics of a country without understanding its politics, and vice versa. It begins with the assumption that economic policy is, that economic decisions are policy questions and that policy questions are political questions. And so you really do have to have the 2 together. And then, as I said, the language requirement that matches the regional requirement. So here, taking ancient Greek and studying China is not going to work. Here you would have to take Mandarin. Okay, so lucky for you, this will be posted along with the slides and you can look at it a little bit more closely, but it's intended to give you broadly an idea, first of all, that that coming in as a freshman and doing the program is doable. And hang on, transfer students, the next slide is for you. But it also gives you some idea of how it's best organized, or one way of organizing it, so that when you get into your fourth year, you're focusing mainly on graduate coursework, and you'll see the INTL 190 hanging out there on the spring of your senior year. And then the summer internship. Everybody who does the BA MIA program is required to do an internship between their senior year and their graduate year. And this is an internship that GPS Career Services will help you find. And should it be one that takes you abroad or outside of California, will help you fund. There's no reason to help you find an internship in Geneva, Switzerland, and then not help you get there. And so this really is an opportunity for you to kind of try out something that you think you might be interested in as a job for the summer, but everyone will have to do one. And this is the academic plan if you came in as a transfer student. And again, we do know that some transfer students actually take an extra year, particularly if you come in without a lot of the lower division work done. If you're IS Econ, for example, and you haven't done the lower division economics, or you haven't finished the math sequence because of where you went to college, you either didn't know what you were interested in at that point, or they just simply didn't have those classes. Sometimes it takes an extra year. That's fine if that's the position you're in, or you just want to spend that extra year exploring UCSD and taking art classes and literature classes and history classes before you sort of narrow your focus into graduate work. And so it is possible to take longer, but this does show you that it's doable in 3 years. So the details of the application then here are, the applications are in April and due on April 10th. This, gives you the detail. And again, this is all going to be posted so that you have it, on your screen if you want to. And we'll be doing an application workshop. Erin, when is that scheduled?
It on a later slide. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay,
but
so that's right, you added it on a slide. Okay, so we do have an application workshop coming up, as well as a second one that I will do to help people with their personal statements. But this tells you what the application requires. Now, one thing I want to point out here is this line on here that says you will apply for fall 2022. I get a half a dozen emails, a week that say it only has fall 2022, but I'm actually going to be starting in fall 2021. The application is actually a graduate application. So even though you will start graduate work in fall of 2021, you won't be a graduate student until fall of 2022. So the application is only tentatively submitted until you are formally allowed to matriculate to graduate coursework. And then at that point, we push the button to send it over to graduate division. So when it asks you what quarter you want to apply to, the answer is fall 2022. I know it doesn't make complete sense unless you understand what the status of the application actually is. These are the admissions requirements, and I'm going to answer this question because it's sort of right in the middle of what we're doing from Sylvia. It can be someone from your community college. The most important thing is that you're asking people to write letters for you who can speak about you, your work in their class, that they know about you, that they can write you a strong recommendation. For many of you, your community college classes were smaller. The chances that your faculty know you better is a lot higher. And you may have developed a good relationship with them. So absolutely a community college professor is good. By the way, also an employer, your letters, your recommendations don't have to be only academic. If you had done an internship If you've had a job where you have a supervisor who can write you a strong letter that talks about you, we're good with that as well, of course. So these are the requirements. A meeting with me is not exactly a requirement, but it is a strong suggestion, so that I can look at your coursework, so that we can talk about what you need to do for your application. And later you can see where my email address is, and send me an email directly and make an appointment. The completion of this coursework by the end of your spring quarter of your junior year, the math sequence, the economics, for econ and political science tracks, and the econ management lower division for the business track, 101 and 102, and substantial progress in your major and GE requirements. And it's my advice that your GE requirements should be completed by the end of your junior year, so that you're not taking big GE classes while you're also taking graduate coursework. This makes it a lot easier for you to move into graduate work, where the classes do tend to move more quickly. The amount of homework that you have is more the ante is up a little bit. Problem sets more often. It's much more difficult to kind of space out your work if you have a bunch of other coursework. And I want to make sure that you can get to the end of your bachelor's degree and both graduate with a bachelor's degree and also be, emotionally and physically healthy and happy and whole, rather than completely burned out from having to work yourself into a state of collapse. Major GPA of a 3.4 and a cumulative GPA of a 3.0. We're going to look at your major GPA and look at the important classes in your upper division requirements for the major, because that's going to tell us how you're going to do in the coursework at GPS. So it's very important to do well in those upper division courses. The difference between the two GPAs, of course, is a recognition of the fact that most of you do better in your upper division major courses than you did when you came in as a physics major and discovered after 2 physics labs that physics is not for you. Or as you were just getting used to the quarter system or getting used to the university in general. There is a kind of learning curve over the course of 4 years, and you tend to do better as you move on. So that's why the major GPA is higher. So when we look at applications, strong GPA, we want to, when we look at your personal statement, we want to see why you're interested, what is it that you're interested in international affairs, and why. To see courses that bear out that you're interested in international affairs, that this is something that you've thought about, that you want to do as a profession, so that you've got a kind of organized and coherent statement of purpose. We want a resume from you. Now, we do understand that in the current circumstances, first of all, you're undergraduate, so you're not going to have 3 pages of a work history. Unless your parents sent you out to the workhouse as a 10-year-old, you're not going to have a lot of work experience. And we don't want to see that, by the way. But we know that you're not going to have a lot of work experience, but we do want to, if you have worked, if you have had a job, then put it on your resume, because it does tell us, that you know what it's like to get up every day and go to a job where somebody tells you what to do, and to work steadily and have a work ethic. We know that the chances that you have a lot of experience abroad, particularly if you're a domestic student, for the last year, you haven't been able to travel, and we don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. And so we're not looking to see that you've worked in a lab in Switzerland, or worked in a consulate in Beijing. Your resume, please don't pad it. We know exactly what the circumstances are that a lot of you are operating under. So don't worry about that. And strong recommendations. Your personal statement, strong recommendations, and good coursework. Those are the 3 things that are most important. Financial aid. So when you are in the 5-year program, you do the first year of graduate work as an undergraduate. So it's at an undergraduate tuition and fee cost, and undergraduate financial aid applies in that first year. In your graduate year, there is also financial aid available. It's a different, you then jump into a sort of different pool, but it's many of the same forms, but your eligibility renews if you go to graduate school. And if you do well in the first year core classes as a senior, there's a very good possibility that you'll be able to be a teaching assistant or a research assistant or a reader, which means that you'll be able to pay for your graduate work by also being a TA. And that's a huge help, as you know, and if your parents are paying for you to go to school, as your parents will appreciate. So there are also TA opportunities in other departments. We have a lot of students at GPS, for example, who TA for Rady or in political science, in economics, even in literature. If you've got a minor and you've done work, for example, in other departments, then getting a job is quite doable. And so, but I'm not going to go through this list, but the point of this is that, you know, it's a broad array of professions that's out there for you. And you know, you want to work in a think tank, you want to work in a bank, you want to work in a nonprofit or an NGO, you want to go to work for the United Nations and do development work. You want to go work in social media. We have people at Facebook, Google, and YouTube right now. We have them in some of the smaller startups. We have a lot of people who work for the federal government, and government employment, I think, is going to open up because you can't spend money to improve the economy without creating jobs in the federal government. And so policy work is going to open up in the federal government. And of course, international students who then return home to their home countries and get jobs with the MIA find that they go in at a higher level than they would with just a bachelor's degree. GPS has an incredibly good career services team, and you will meet them very early. As you come in, many of you will probably take summer prep with us in the summer, and we'll do then the career development program that runs simultaneously. And this is meeting the career services program, them beginning to work with you on how to develop a resume, how to do interviews, how to look for a job, how to think about what you're interested in, how to collect the skills, or think about putting a circle around, if you will, the kind of skills that you're developing, and thinking about how to decide then what kind of a job you want to have. They bring in alumni. We have alumni all over the world. You name a place, we've got alumni there. They come in via Zoom talks. When we're able to travel, they come in and do career talks. They're also very good connections for getting jobs. And assuming the world opens back up again next year, career services will be taking people to San Francisco, to the Bay Area more generally, to Sacramento, to New York, to Washington, DC, to meet with all kinds of employers, and to begin very early to develop your thinking about what you want to be when you grow up, if it is in fact your goal to grow up. So the career services at GPS is really, they're quite professional and they're quite skilled. Okay. And while I confess that GPS is a little bit behind ISP in terms of its development of its social media profile, ISP, you've done better than we have at GPS. GPS is getting there. Maybe we're better at LinkedIn because the career services people beats the GPS students into getting into LinkedIn immediately. But in general, I think on the social media that you are all on so many hours a day, ISP has been better, but we're getting there. But let me encourage you to follow us on Instagram. This is a good way to see programming. that we do faculty events, faculty research, town halls that we do on all kinds of topics and bring people in, opportunities with career services at GPS, graduate deadlines. Once you get into the program, like ISP, we remind you of academic deadlines via Instagram. We're discovering that graduate students read their Instagram more often and more thoroughly than they read emails. And so we're posting all kinds of things on social media there as well. And so let me encourage you, as they say, to, follow us wherever we go. Oh, and then this is the slide about the application workshop. So we're going to do this. There will be someone from GPS admissions there to sort of talk through the application and talk a little bit more about what they're looking for, and also help you understand what the recommendations are, so that when you ask people to provide you with a recommendation, you can tell them exactly what we're looking for. And then on March 2nd, so that's on February 3rd, emails will go out. It'll be posted to Instagram. So we'll remind you of that. And then the personal statement workshop, because writing a personal statement for a graduate application is different from the one that you all wrote when you applied to UCSD. We're really looking for a much more sort of intellectual personal statement about your intellectual interests and your professional goals. And those presumably have changed since you were seniors in high school. I'm gonna turn this over to my colleagues in ISP, because they're gonna get this right and I'm gonna get this wrong.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and grab this one. So we just wanted you to know, we know that some of you are here today are planning on applying in spring 2021. So we also wanted you to know that the schedule of classes is going to be released in the upcoming weeks for the spring. So all of you will start enrolling soon for spring, but on February 11th, the official class schedule will come out. But if you want to start planning ahead, if you need to there's specific courses you need to take in the spring to be eligible to apply, Brady School of Management, Econ, and Poli-Sci and ISP all have their spring 2021 tentative course offering on their website. If anyone has questions about how to navigate to that, we can do that in the Q&A. I can show you or send you the direct links. But it's really important to start planning ahead, especially if you need to take poly and econ regionally focused courses. Those sometimes can be limited. So we kind of have to come up with alternative ways you can plan or find a different course or something like that. So it's good to start thinking ahead before enrollment begins, before everything kind of fills up.
Okay, here's how to get a hold of me. And you can send me an email. And as I said, I manage my own calendar and I make my own appointments. You can send an email to ISP, and if it's really intended for me, they'll direct it, or they can answer questions about the program. And of course, you all know about the VAC and know how to ask questions there. And it may be that if it's really a question about GPS, that one of the advisors in ISP will forward the email from me, the VAC query to me. So don't be surprised if I pop up on your screen, even in that venue. But by all means, feel free to send me questions, requests for appointments, kind of concerns that you have about the program. Send them to me directly.